Welcome to the Master Passive Income Show. My name is Dustin Heiner, and I'm here to help you learn how to quit that JOB, that just over broke job, by investing in real estate so you never ever have to work a job again. Today, I'm super pumped to bring on somebody who's become an expert in real estate investing. He's a student of mine that has just done tremendously well, and then now is getting into mobile home parks and storage units. Like he's growing tremendously. And on top of that, he's coming on as a Master Passive Income coach as well, has a passion for helping people just like Charles and myself do. I have William Palmer on the show with me. William, thanks so much for being on the show.
Yeah, pleasure to be here, Dustin. Looking forward to it, very much so.
Man, this is great because did you find, I don't know if I actually remember asking, did you find me through listening to the podcast?
Yeah, actually, the way that I found you was I used to be a cop, and so I was sitting there late at night, not anything to do during COVID. We weren't allowed to do very much, and I realized I was sitting there for hours and hours listening to music, but not learning anything. And the one thing you don't really want to do is get bogged down in a book when you're not able to look around you. So I started searching just educational real estate podcasts, and yours the first one came up, and I hit play, and then I binged. I don't know how many episodes there were available at the time, probably 200 or so.
That is so cool. And then now you're on the podcast and you're a part of Master Passive Income now, coaching people, coaching students is just terrific. And that's the reason why I wanted you and Charles and myself, like us type of coaches, is because we have a passion for seeing people succeed. And we enjoy talking about this stuff. So let's talk about how you got started. What were you, so you were a cop before and you knew you need to make a change. Talk to us about that mindset shift of what made you really say, I'm going to dive in, because a lot of people get scared. You know, that first property can get really scary. You know, it's risky and all that stuff, which my opinion is working for somebody else is so much more risky than investing on your own. So talk to us about that, how you got started. What was your mindset going into it?
Yeah, so basically I got to the point where I realized that I didn't want to work for 20 to 30 years and then retire. I wanted to do it when I was much younger. And I wanted to be more in charge of my own quote unquote retirement. I don't necessarily believe in the traditional form of retirement. I don't think Social Security is going to be there when I'm even old enough to draw on it. I'm 30 now, about 28, 27 and a half when I started. And it's been great. But as far as like the mind shift change, that was the big one, beyond just wanting to be able to provide for my family more steadily and not be worried about what happens if I get hurt. I'm not going to get a paycheck. I won't be able to pay my bills. And so that was kind of like a big driving factor for me.
That's 100% right, because same thing for me, because I realized if I wasn't working, if I wasn't there literally making that money, just like if you had your own business where you had customers, if you weren't there literally selling that product or somebody else on that product, then you're not making money. How much better if you have something that's inanimate object like a house that literally does the work for you. So that's awesome. Now, what made you jump into, working with me at Master Passive Income? And then how was it utilizing that process to make $250 a month in passive income, how to make sure that we're building the business first? Talk to us about all that process.
Well, one of the biggest things that drew me to you is you're a Christian, you're a believer like I am myself. And I wanted to make sure that if I'm going to, I didn't know you could, or you would end up being my coach when I started listening to your podcast. But that was one of the biggest drawing factors for me, is because I'm not in it to be wealthy. I think that's just a complete byproduct of real estate. I don't really care about driving a Lamborghini or a Ferrari. I mean, if I want to drive one, I'll go rent one. I think buying one's kind of ridiculous. But that was kind of my mindset going in, and it's been great so far. As far as like jumping in and using your formula or your steps, so to speak, has been really very simple. It's nerve-wracking at first because you realize, hey, there's a lot of money involved, and there's a certain amount of risk involved with investing of any kind at all, period. But if you want to grow and not stay where you're at, there is risk involved in that too. And the idea of having money come in when I'm not actually physically doing something it was phenomenal. So yeah, I think I was your student for quite a while, about 6 months before I even bought my first house. Maybe closer to 9 months, but it was a little while Um, I've constantly felt like I am just creeping through this. I need to hurry up. But there's a certain amount of comfort level. You need to find what your comfort level is. But again, sooner or later, you're going to need to take that plunge, and you do it right. And you just follow the steps, you won't regret it.
Absolutely. And that's something that in the process of you or any student getting their first property, I don't want to just give you a fish and say, here you go, here's your fish. No, I really want you to not need me ever again and just be able to build this business by yourself and keep growing and then teach it to your kids. Because really, like you said, it's simple. It's not necessarily easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it, but it's simple. It's just a process that we go through. We just make sure we check everything to make sure everything connects and make everything makes is going to be making us money. And then the property is running itself because we have property managers, all that awesome stuff. Okay, talk to us about your first property that you got and talk to us about, financing and how much you bought it for, how much the passive income and everything about that.
Yeah, so the first house, using how you find houses on Zillow and things like that was really easy. And I mean, I jump on Zillow now and I'm always like, where do I want to go next kind of thing, but that's later down the road. I ended up settling on Cleveland, Ohio, and ironically, I didn't know this. It was about 4 blocks away from one of your houses, which I thought was funny. But I ended up finding it, and the price tag originally was for $84,500, and I was like, well, the house looks good. Found a property manager, did all that jazz, found one that I liked, and we started working together. And they were telling me what it was going to go for rent and all this other stuff. Well, I put an offer in at $55,000 because I didn't want to leave anything on the table. So I took it at 55. They didn't even respond back. Didn't counter offer, didn't anything. So I let it go. 2 weeks later, they drop it to 74.5. And so I come back with a $58,000 offer, and we counter back and forth once or twice. And eventually, I think by the third or fourth offer on my part, they wouldn't go below 65, but I got them to 64.5. And the numbers for the house worked at $70,000. So I was saving 5 grand. And right before we went to signing and everything like that, before they signed it, they actually came to me and said, nope, we want $70,000 before they signed it. And I was like, you're not going to get it. So it was like, come back to me when you're serious. And I walked away. And for 2.5 days, I was sweating bullets because I wanted the house. And anyway, got all the signed paperwork. It was a done deal. But as far as financing went, I created the LLC and did all that stuff. And I had sold a truck and a bunch of other stuff to have a good down payment. And so I had enough that I knew I could buy one. And I ended up going with a hard money lender. And they were like 10% for a year. And I knew that with a residential one that I could refi at 6 months would be the quickest I could do it. And closer to 12 months was pretty much guaranteed that that's going to happen. But I wanted to get it out of that 10% as quick as possible. I had 2 or 3 banks lined up that would do the refi. But at the last minute, it was like they changed some regulation. And so they couldn't do it anymore. And so I remember coming back to you and I was like, I have called so many banks trying to find somebody that would do this. And he's like, you were like, oh, why don't you try Lima One Capital or something like that? And so I called them and they did it. Now it was a higher interest rate, but I didn't really care. But when it was all said and done, I think I was in about $22,000 because I had to put some in the rehab. It was kind of a little worse for wear. But when it was all said and done, it was cash flowing $354.86.
That's
And
tremendous.
it was great. And then fast forward a year, I had my first turnover. And through a happy circumstance, I talked to my property manager about raising the rents $100. And he was like, oh, yeah, I think we could do that. So unbeknownst to me, he raised another $100 on top of that, trying to compensate for added water and sewer costs, which are attached to the house right there. And so it ended up going for $200 more a month. And it got signed in October for a 2-year lease. So
So how much is the passive income now on that property?
it's $554.
Whoo! That's
So,
well, I would say that's a grand slam. I mean, if anything, it's a home run, if not a grand slam. I mean, if it was a grand slam, you would have like a lot more equity in it. But how much did you capture in equity when you bought the property?
uh, that one was $22,000 in equity.
So when you bought it, it was
Mhm,
22,000 less from when they're asking. So that
mhm.
you capture that. So that's a huge win. And remember, everybody listening, we're investors. We don't pay full market price. We don't pay over. That's silly homeowners do that. They get all happy about, oh, I love this press. The drapes look beautiful, blah, blah, blah. My kids will go to the school. Well, we don't care about that stuff. Our tenants will be fine to pay a good rent for it, but we look at it as inventory. And so you bought it for much. That's a lot of money saved. You fix it up, you make it worth much more, and then you're already making $550 a month in passive income. In my book, that's a grand slam. Remember, the minimum is 250. Now you're at 350, and in just a little bit of time, rents have gone up. That is phenomenal. Now, talk to me. Now, you also already have an Airbnb. It was also midterm property, but you have another property. So, talk to us about that another property, because a lot of people, when I say buy and hold, or I say long-term properties, I'm not necessarily saying long-term rental where they're in there for year after year after year. No, for me, for us, it's buy and hold. We want to hold on these properties. We want to give these properties to our kids. Even if you get a multifamily, let's say you get a 100-unit apartment complex, our goal is not to get out of that in five years like syndications do. Our goal is to refinance it, pay off our investors, and then hold on to that property perpetually, and then literally pass that down to our kids on top of that. So talk to us about this long-term buy and hold property that you now do with short-term rental properties as well, short-term tenants as well as midterm as well.
Yeah. So through circumstance, I ended up being offered. My parents offered to sell me their house, which I had remodeled for them after I was done being a cop. And I knew the house because I had remodeled it, and I was like, "Well, that's a really good idea." It's a 3-bed, 2-bath, but the downstairs has a whole separate apartment with a washer and dryer, kitchen, bedroom, living room area. And so they actually live down there. And yes, they live with me. I don't live with them. And so
Good clarification. I love
yeah,
it.
so they go back and forth between Virginia and Florida, just kind of whenever they want. And so they gave me a really good price on the house if I would allow them to do that, which I was more than happy to do. Um, so we moved out of a house. It was a 3-bed, 2-bath, nothing fancy. And so I was gonna sell it, but again, being an investor, I was like, man, I had it for a 2.86 interest rate. And I'd already refied and pulled some equity out of it. So I didn't really want to touch it. I didn't want to sell it. It was like, this is just too good, because the mortgage payment was like $754 a month. I mean, it was a joke. So I did midterm rentals to traveling nurses for about 6 months.
On your
That would have
first
been
property that you moved out of, correct?
correct. And it did pretty good. It didn't do amazing. It did pretty good. We are in a pretty good location around like 3 major hospitals, 2 colleges. So we're kind of in a pretty interesting little hub. Um, but it did pretty well, about $600 to $700 a room per month. And then we were going to turn it into an Airbnb at your suggestion, Dustin. And but my brother needed a place to live because his house, which is about 45 minutes away, had a lot of equity in it, and he was trying to buy another house, a bigger house, and closer to town. So I talked to my wife and we prayed about it, and we decided that we were going to shut down the Airbnb for a little bit for an unknown amount of time, and allow them to live in our house for rent. So they paid $1,500 in rent. So we made about $500 a month with all expenses while they were living there. And my brother's very courteous, and so he found a house within 2 months, closed, and we're out within 3. And he even went back and did touch up paint and all this other stuff to put it back to normal. And then we put it up Airbnb, and it was gross. Our best month was gross $3,300 a month. And so, but that's football season. So we do really well in football season. Doesn't do so hot in the winter, but that was completely expected. We didn't expect it to do amazing every single month. So, yeah, and that's how we ended up with that one. And then probably, I guess it would have been April time frame. I was working on a job, and I just randomly called a realtor friend and said, "What do you have that's interesting coming up on the market?" She's like, "I don't know if you'll be interested in this, but about 45 minutes away, there's a little town." She's like, there's a small mobile home park that somebody's going to put up for sale, but they're trying to sell it kind of like before it hits the MLS, but we're still going to be the broker for it." I was like, "Well, I'd be interested." I just figured I'll go ride through it and see, I figured it'd be astronomical in price. And the guy had bought it 4 years prior with the intention of turning it into like getting rid of all the mobile homes, like having to like force everybody to move, and turn them into hunting and fishing cabins in this lot. But the town wouldn't let him, and he didn't do his homework. So he spent 4 years trying to convince the town to let him do it, and they wouldn't do it. But he was a horrible landlord because he would knock on their door every Saturday for rent, and he had people squatting, and anyway. But it was a 7 pad mobile home park with an old duplex on it, and the duplex was not very nice. And so anyway, I ended up buying it for $175,000, which was his asking price, and he actually bought it for 200 grand 4 years prior. So he was losing $25,000 in the sale, but he was just a terrible manager. So I bought it and immediately got the one meth head out. She had been squatting for years, and I just dropped the line that I used to be a cop when she lied to me and said she wasn't high. And I was like, "It's 1 o'clock and your eyes are dilated. I can tell." And anyway, she left without having to do the eviction process or anything. So, and I happen to own that mobile home. So most of the mobile homes on this park are older tenants. Some of them have been there up to 40 years, and they own their own single wide, and they just pay lot rent. Lot rent was $105 a pad. So it was unbelievably cheap. And the duplex was $425 a side, but one side wasn't paying. Well, I went in, one side of the duplex, the people left through certain circumstances. So that was vacant. Ended up putting a new roof on it, remodeling the one side of the duplex. New roof was kind of expensive, but there was an abandoned Jeep on the park with an abandoned mobile home. And through going through our DMV process, I actually got possession of both of them. And the Jeep cost me about $130 in taxes, and the mobile home cost me about $135 in taxes. So I had both of these free and clear, plus the one trailer that a person had left. So I was trying to figure out what to do with all this, and went to a management company. They said they would manage it for 10% flat, which is a little bit high for a mobile home park, but it's not their typical thing. But the property manager really knew the area. He actually lived in the area. So he's like, "I know pretty much everybody here." He's like, "I can handle this, no problem." And he's been great. Everything's handled through him. Anytime there's like, when I go down and I see something, I just send him a text and say, "Hey, can we do this?" And he's like, "I'll take care of it."
So
But
how much are
now,
you making in passive income on this? Because I mean, it sounds like, well, you're an investor. So we look at investments and we see how it's going to make us money, but then also how we're going to manage the properties, how we're going to make sure we're perpetually
yeah.
making money from these properties. So how much money are you making on this now? And are you going to be looking to raise rents in the future to make it more and develop the other pads that are not developed?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we bought it, it was only making $950 a month for the whole thing, which wouldn't even cover the mortgage. But we were able to raise the rents from 105 to 155 per lot, and then we had got one side of the duplex fixed up. It was $700 a month, I believe it was. But basically, the whole thing ended up bringing in $1,950 a month, and so it was positive $350 to me, which is what it's making right now. But it is on schedule. in April 1st, the rents will be raised to $205 a month per lot for lot rent. And then we'll raise the rents of the duplex probably about $25, and that's about where it will stay. And then I won't raise the rents anymore on lot rent because most of my tenants are older and I want them to not feel like they're being forced out. And they're good
Yeah,
tenants.
we
Why would
want
I
them
want
to
to do that?
we want them to stay. And what you're also doing is you're looking for opportunities. When you saw this, you saw the opportunity. We could raise
Mhm.
this almost double the amount of rent, but we'll get there over time. But another
Mhm.
opportunity is you had that card, you got it from the DMV, put in your name, and you sold it. You made money.
Yeah.
You spent a couple $100 to make it running, and you sold it, right?
Yeah, I did. So I ended up, I didn't know what condition it was in. I had to hire a key guy to come out and rekey it. And we opened it up and we jumped it and it started, which was unbelievable. But basically, the thing was worth about $7,500. And I was $135 in, and it needed a new battery, new set of tires, and an oil change was the only mechanical things it needed, and maybe windshield wipers. So I took it to the local shop. I like limped it down there and said, "Hey, can you do all this?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure." So they got it all done. They called me. I went and picked it up, and then I advertised it after I brought it home and like cleaned it up. Well, it was about I sold it for $7,500. And so that was a home run because all in all, I was in it about 1,400 bucks. So it was great return on investment. I think I worked at one night and was like 533% or something.
Well,
Um,
you're seeing the opportunity. You already know that, hey, this is I already own this. Let's see what we can do with it. And
yeah.
I definitely need to also bring up how I think what your superpower is among many, but what a really big superpower I notice about you is you're a people person because you know real estate is not about a property, it's about people. And the
Oh
more
yeah.
people that we can get around us as investors or potential people that would want to lend us money, be a part of the business process, all that sort of stuff. And so I want you to tell us about how you found an investor at a garbage dump. You talk wearing Crocs. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Okay. So my day job is building decks and remodel and things like that. And I was at the landfill chucking stuff out of a trailer, and I looked up and there was this guy chucking stuff out of his truck or his trailer, and something about him just kind of like made me look up again. And I realized he was wearing a t-shirt, camo shorts, and Crocs, chucking boards with nails out of it. And I was like, this guy does not do this
In
for
the
a
middle of
living.
the day. Yeah.
In the middle of the day. And so I just like this. I was like, hey, what do you do for a living? Like, I'm dumbfounded. Like, you obviously don't do this. And so I just yelled at him, and you have all this machinery going and it smells awful and it's hot. And he's like, well, I used to be a doctor, but now I'm an investor because I made so much more money in being an investor. And he's like, and I homeschool my kids and all this other stuff. And I was like, we need to have coffee because that's what I want to do. And he's like, great, when and where? And so we went and had coffee. And we just sat around and talked. And we haven't done any business deals together yet, but I have his phone number. And if I have anything kind of strange or I want a second opinion to make sure I'm not like deviating too far off one direction or another, I just give him a call. But he also not only does single family homes, he also has a storage unit complex that he just bought. Ironically, it was one that I was going to make an offer on. So I found out at that coffee meet that he had just bought it, and I was like, "Oh man, what'd you buy it for?" And so we were like, I was laughing about it, and, but it was a really good buy on his part. But so
But
a
what
lot
you
of
do is you talk to so many people
oh
and you're
yeah,
not afraid of sharing that you're an investor. And what the biggest thing that I had to realize for myself was because I would get a little self-conscious thinking, man, I feel like I'm preying on these friends and family members. And, I might get insurance salesman or car salesman. And like, no, it's not really that. What it comes down to is us as investors, we have opportunities for people. If they don't want to take part in the opportunity, it's totally fine. We're not going to force them to do it. We want them to do whatever they think's best. But what we do is look at them. I have something that would help them. We have to change that perspective. I have this that I can help them. And so if you come with the perspective of how can I help you, number one, and with that, figuring out best way, it could be where they loan you money and you give them a good interest rate on it, or they need some place to rent and you have a place to rent, whatever it might be. It's connecting with people because remember, real estate's about people. It's not about a property. So now tell us about your entire portfolio. What do you have now?
So what I have now is a single family home in Ohio that pulls in 554 a month. And then I got the Airbnb house, which in general, the net income of that is about $1,200 to $1,400 a month on average. That's the average. And then the mobile home park, I have that. And then actually in 2 weeks, I'm closing on a duplex. In and another investor that actually we became friends through the guys that remodeled the duplex on the mobile home park. I ran into these guys at Lowe's, and so we started talking about my project or whatever. And they're like, "Oh, you need to meet this guy." Well, he's an investor, and he's like, "Well, I got this property. Would you be interested?" And so we're actually working that deal out right now, and I'll be buying that with literally zero of my own dollars, including rehab cost.
That's
Um,
awesome. How much would you be making passive income?
so when I buy it, I'll be making about, it's kind of on the lower side. It's about $190 a month, I believe is what it was. And then um, when I actually refi out, which I already have two banks that will refi out in 6 months, I will be making about 390, right around there. And the rents are not at the highest possible rent that they can be at. And I also ran my numbers at 9% interest rate, and I overestimated the taxes and overestimated the monthly outgo of like the mowing the lawn and things like that. So, I mean, I know that's what it'll make minimum, but it really could be closer to $500. Um,
Yeah, I remember
and
running the numbers with you and checking out. I'm like, this could be a really, especially having no money into the deal. And everybody needs to, when you're hearing this, I want you to realize that how many times it's probably at least been 2 or 3 times that William has said, and I ran into this person, and and I ran into this person. We started talking to this person. Like every single time I talk to William, he's always saying that. He's always saying, "Oh, I talked to this person. I just ran into them, and I ran into this new person." And that's the thing is when you really start talking to people, you realize it's a small world in a sense. Not like everybody knows everybody, but you can always help somebody. So if there's anything you take out of William's interview is how William is always friendly, always helping other people. At the same time, we all help each other. Man, William, so do you have any lessons learned as you've gone through this that you can help us to know?
oh, absolutely. The biggest thing is just network with people. Just go up, talk to people. I know there's people that are uh, not so outgoing and things like that. I used to think I was an introvert. I got married. My wife told me I was crazy if I thought that. And so I love seeing what other people are doing and the like seeing their successes and being able to help them if at all possible or encourage them in their successes. If you do that, you're building the camaraderie, the bond that you'll have with them for a long time, and they'll want to help you, and people will hear about it, and people will bring their deals to your doorstep. But the biggest thing I always tell everyone, to me, real estate is 90% networking, and it is 8% funding and 2% deal kind of thing. So
Yeah, it's a
it's
good percentage.
um, most of the deals and things that I've had come up this year alone, I didn't even look for. I've had two mobile home parks drop on my lap in the last 60 days. And me and Dustin, you remember probably, we actually ran numbers on a $3.5 million gas station because I was like, well, this is interesting. But ultimately, I just decided, even though it would bring in $12,000 a month, it was not worth the amount of hours and the work it was for me to do it because it didn't fit my profile, I suppose, or the direction I wanted to go for investing.
And on top of that, I even have experience running convenience stores, and it's a lot of work. And I was like, well, it's good. It's on paper, it could be a little not as good in general, but let's say you were getting at $10,000 to $12,000 a month. That's a lot of work. So just put that in your head. Like you're basically
Oh yeah,
buying a job or a business unless you build somebody. And all that to say, what you're saying is you're networking and opportunities come your way because other people are talking to you about what they're doing. You're talking about what you're doing, and you guys connect, which is just terrific. Now, William, this is great. Now, I'm super excited that now you're going to be a coach here at Master Passive Income, helping people. And that's the big thing that I look out for, just like Charles, as well as myself, is genuine people that say, you know what, I, number one, enjoy talking about this, but number two, I love seeing the success that other people have. And you've even created your own real estate meetup in Virginia. Yeah. And so do you want to give that away? So like, how do people can find it if they want to show up to that?
Sure. Well, we don't really have I'm horrible about social media. I don't use it. So I was just telling Dustin, I actually should probably change that. But it's it's in Christiansburg, Virginia, which is located next to Virginia Tech College. And it's a once a week meeting, and or once a month, excuse me, meeting. And we meet at a local hotel. We just have finger foods, and we just usually have somewhat of an agenda. But as you know, with real estate, you get one person to ask a question and it can just go on this rabbit trail. But the whole point of this meeting, I started looking for one just so I could be around more like-minded people and hopefully get some private money people through it, or be able to help somebody else or something like that. And I realized there weren't really any in my area that I could find, even though I was looking actively. So I just got fed up with it. And then I was like, I'm going to do this myself. So I, word of mouth, just spread the word out. Coworkers that I used to work with, people I knew that were vaguely interested, or people that I didn't know if they were interested. People at the Home Depot and the Lowe's. And I was like, I'm doing this. You're welcome to come. It's free. You don't even have to say a thing the whole time you're there. But if you got any questions, if I don't know the answer, I'll find the answer, and then I'll shoot it back to you in an email, or we'll talk about it the next time we meet. But it's it's just a local real estate.
How would they find out? How would they find out where and when, and like you get the more details? Is there like a website, or is there like, how can they make sure that they can get a hold of you and do this?
Unfortunately not, but what I can do is I'd be more than happy to share my my email if anyone just wants to email.
Don't do that, because you'll probably get a good amount of people emailing you, asking questions. Hey, can I get free coaching? That's probably what you're going to get as well. So what we'll do is we'll put it in the link in the description for, let's say, the next couple episodes, or meetings. And then as you're working out the whole process of maybe even just to shoot, you should even literally do this. Like today, have your wife create an Instagram account that's just the Christiansburg meetup, and then just go there. So you can always post it on there. So we'll have some way. Check the description when you're listening to this. Check the description, because you definitely want to be at that meetup if you're at all in the area. And what's great too is with William putting this on and being ahead of it, people look at him as the expert, which is great. It's like people come to me now because of Master Passive Income and say, hey, I want to invest with you. Same thing with William, because we're putting ourselves out there to help people. Then people want to be a part of with us. So, man, William, this has been fantastic. I'm super pumped that you are a part of Master Passive Income, came on the show, and also being a coach, man. I really appreciate you being on the show today.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Dustin. I'm really looking forward to what the future has in store.
All right, man. You take care, buddy.
Thanks. See ya.